Okay, now I have shared this story with you guys before. So if this story is new to you, then yay. If not, then just, realize that you're a different person in a different state of mind today than you were, 2 or 3 months ago when I told this story. But this story is so perfect for our talk today on making friends with our emotions. So I want to share it with you one more time. So a big, tough, brawny samurai approached a Zen master who was deep in meditation. And this impatient and discourteous samurai warrior started yelling at the Zen master, "Tell me the nature of heaven and hell. Tell it to me now." And the Zen master opened his eyes and looked at him and said, "Why should I answer to a shabby, disgusting, despondent slob like you?" And his eyes grew big, and he took out his sword, and he could not bear these insults, and he was consumed by rage. And just as he raised his sword to strike the Zen master looked him deep in the eye and said, "That's hell." And at that moment, the samurai immediately understood that his mind had just created his own hell, one filled with resentment, hatred, fury. And he realized that he was so deep in his torment that he was ready to actually cause harm and do violence. The samurai's eyes filled with tears. He set the sword aside. He put his hands together and he bowed to the Zen master. And the Zen master looked him in the eye and said, "That's heaven." And so this story, which has been told numerously, has a really great response from the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, which many of you may be familiar with. So I'd like to read to you her response to this story. The view of the warrior Bodhisattva, or spiritual warrior, is not hell is bad and heaven is good, or get rid of hell and just seek heaven. Instead, we encourage ourselves to develop an open heart and an open mind to heaven, to hell, to everything. Only with this kind of equanimity can we realize that no matter what comes along, we are always standing in the middle of an open space. And only with equanimity can we see that whatever comes into the circle has come to teach us exactly what we need to know. So this morning, with this talk on making friends with our emotions, I'm going to be working with this definition of emotions: the body's reaction to thinking. Now, this is a very large and complex topic, and obviously notwithstanding, there is some of the karmic residue that is brought into this world with our birth, leftover fear, leftover anger, hatred, resentment, delusion. But on a daily basis, working in the trenches as we do as practitioners, I want to work with this definition of the body's reaction to thinking. So let us understand equanimity. I'm going to talk about that, and cultivate the second step of the Eightfold Noble Path, known as Sammasankappa, or wise thought. The body's reaction to thinking. The second step on the Eightfold Noble Path, wise thought. So I want to kind of unpack these for just a moment. So first, equanimity. Equanimity is an essential Buddhist virtue. In fact, in our chant this morning, it was the last one, upekkha in Pali, equanimity. And here's how Bhikkhu Bodhi describes or explains equanimity. Equanimity is an evenness of mind, unshakable freedom, a state of inner equipoise that cannot be upset by the 8 winds. In the Buddhist practice, the 8 winds are gain, loss, honor, dishonor, praise, blame, pleasure, and pain. So equanimity remains constant and is unshakable in the light of those things. Upekkha, or equanimity, is freedom from all points of self-reference. It is indifference only to the demands of the ego self with its craving for pleasure and status and position, not to the well-being of one's fellow human beings, I might add. So transcending turmoil through working with the mind, as is often referred, the Buddha said, what you think, you become. So if life is what you make it, there remains then obviously the opportunity to shape our attitudes and behavior by possessing a calm, stable, and unshakable mind. How is this done? Well, there are several ways. What I want to talk about today is some of the more obvious things. For example, exercise, yoga, contemplative movements such as Qigong, Tai Chi. All of these things can be tools in helping us to develop a strong sense of center, a strong sense of balance and equanimity. It's the open hand. And the reason the open hand is so often used is because in the normal day-to-day practice of life, this hand is grasping after sense pleasure, and this hand is trying to keep away and avoid pain of all kinds. Spiritual pain, mental pain, emotional pain, physical pain, trying to keep this away. So here we are. And so therefore, in the Buddhist practice, we talk about the open hand, allowing the occurrence of the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. My teacher used to talk about the Buddhist Macarena. And so there's kind of a little bit of that. It's a great way that we can visualize this. So yes, there is exercise, there are those kinds of trainings that can help us. Of course, diet, eating right, taking care of the form, the body. And so given that the mind is the cause of our emotional upheaval, we can also begin working with the mind and enter now our practice as practitioners of meditation, spending time in noble silence, stillness, observing the nature of mind, watching it, noticing it, observing it with a playful curiosity, as Shunryu Suzuki put it, Zen mind, beginner's mind. So with meditation and mindfulness, we can develop the ability to put a wedge of awareness right at that moment, that really precious moment when an emotion arises. Boom. We all know this spot. There's a phrase or a word or a stoplight or the phone rings or something is said that there's that trigger. Boom. There we are. And in those few precious moments right at the beginning, it hasn't solidified into full-blown anger, resentment, disgust, impatience. There's just that moment when you feel it. Yes, it's in the body. There is a stimulus. Something happens. By the way, those are all neutral. The person cutting you off on the highway doesn't know that's you in the car and isn't trying to cut you off. They're lost in their own world. Life is not personal. But boy, the cutter was like, you, what are you doing, crazy maniac? So I'm going to ride your bumper 3 inches off because I'm not a crazy maniac, but I'm going to teach you a lesson. But see, there's that trigger that the body senses this. It's very natural. It's very normal. It's actually designed to keep us from getting eaten by bears. But there just aren't really a lot of bears and tigers and lions anymore. But there are people cutting us off, and there are distractions and annoyances. Those are the new bears and tigers. So they still trigger reaction in our body. And then here comes the overlay of the thinking. What that event means. Here comes the thinking. And this is where our practice kicks in. This is where meditation and mindfulness kick in. Matthew Ricard, the French biologist turned Buddhist monk, has this to say. As a practitioner, it begins by understanding that true happiness does not fundamentally depend on changing external conditions, but rather on changing his or her own mind and the way it translates the circumstances of existence. It's not what happens to us, it's what happens in us. And to quote the Buddha in one of the sutras, whose mind is like rock, steady, unmoved, dispassionate for things that spark passion, unangered by things that spark anger. When one's mind is developed like this, from where can there come suffering and stress? Our experiences are neutral. It's what we do with them that kicks in all kinds of emotions, the body's reaction to thinking. So that's the first part of working with and dealing with emotions, managing, if you will, making friends, taking it a step farther. You remember the talk a couple weeks on button, who's pushing your buttons, and realizing that those are people bringing us a wonderful gift. In the same way, our emotions are messengers. They are natural. They're a part of this humanity. They're a part of our beingness. They're not bad. There's no such thing as a bad emotion. They can, however, get stuck. And when they get stuck, they fester. And when they fester, they begin generating patterns, very important word, patterns of speech and behavior. I've noticed recently a funny pattern that has developed for myself. So sometimes right before bed at night, I like to plop on the bed and I'll grab my laptop and I'll plop it down and I'll pull up some interesting thing for the evening. Well, on more than one occasion, the battery says like 5%. And I'm like, oh, because I just got comfortable. I got my blanket, I got my little laptop desk thing, and I got it all set up, and the pillows are just right. Oh yeah, perfect, can't move. I flip it open, and oh! And I've been watching this reaction because it's so interesting to me. What is this reaction, this moment of annoyance? And then my whole body, and it's so quick. But just noticing it is half the battle, because most of our life we never even see it. We're not even aware of it. The whole process, from the moment that there is a stimulus to the moment that we have a reaction, and then wind up making things a lot worse because we react with a statement, or we ride their bumper, or we throw the phone across the room, or whatever we do. So that's the first part, which is cultivating our practice, meditation and mindfulness. And now for Samasankappa, the second step on the Eightfold Noble Path, which is wise thought. I want to help us to revisit and completely shift the way that we think about emotions, all of them. The happy emotions and the sad emotions are just two sides of the same coin. One's not better than the other. They're all expressions of our humanity, of our humanness. They're all messengers. The happy ones don't tend to bring with it as deep a core message for waking up as the difficult emotions. And interestingly enough, we have more difficult emotions than we do happy emotions. So here is a way that we can look at our emotions differently. Every emotion that arises, if you can embody this core teaching, every emotion that arises is here to give you a gift. As Pema Chodron put it, what enters the circle is here to teach us something. Everything that enters the circle. So let's begin. Let's talk about bitterness. If bitterness arises, here's what it has come to teach you. Bitterness shows you where you need to heal, where you still hold a judgment of yourself or someone else. When emotions get stuck is when they can become a problem. We're meant to simply let them pass through. Animals can do this. Animals know how to shake it off, how to release this tension, this trauma, whatever it was. Human beings have a tendency to hold on to it while we're engaged in a 2-year-long lawsuit. Resentment. Resentment shows you where you are living in the past and not allowing this precious present moment to be exactly as it is. Resentment is stuck in something that happened 2 weeks ago, 2 hours ago. You haven't let it go. Anger. Anger shows you what you are passionate about, where your boundaries are, and what you believe needs to change about the world. And it's important to simply sit and process and be with the anger. It shows you where your passion is, whether it's on families at the border, whether it's fires in the rainforests of Brazil, no matter what it is, you have a passion there. Acknowledge that, wow, that's important to me. And then as you are moved to action, do not take action from a place of anger, of fear and resentment, but purify that anger, release it, and recognize it as simply the body's reaction to thinking that that's wrong, because there is no right or wrong. There is only the constant swirling of creation and destruction. It just happens to be that you're blaming somebody for some particular element of destruction. And you're focused on destruction, not seeing the creation, not seeing that because of certain elements in our political system now, more women are running for office and getting elected than ever before. Maybe it took this for that to happen. So you can't say it's bad. But anger shows you where you're passionate. So purify that and then take action from, well, obviously, this is mine to do. Whether it's environmental, helping people, homeless. Guilt. Guilt shows you that you are still living life in other people's expectations of what you should do. Ooh, can you feel that one? Strong sense of guilt and shame. You are trapped in other people's expectations of what you should be doing, who you should be, what you should be achieving. Come home. Listen to guilt. It has brought you a wonderful gift. It's not bad. Don't run from it. Don't avoid it. Shame. Shame shows you that you are internalizing other people's beliefs about you or who you are. And it's time to reconnect with yourself. What's important to you? What are your needs? What are your wants? What are your desires? Anxiety, a big one in our world today. Anxiety shows you that you need to wake up right now, that you need to be present right now, that you are stuck in the past or the future. See, that's how ego mind presents itself. The ego mind cannot be in the present moment. It's always stuck in the past or the future. The future, you remember the Buddha said there's only 2 days a year that are completely worthless, and that's yesterday and tomorrow. If you are caught in worrying, I remember actually, Rev Nian actually mentioned this one time, and I thought it was a beautiful thing, that worry is a misuse of imagination, an abuse of imagination. Something in the future or stuck in the past. And finally, sadness. Sadness shows you the depth of your feeling, the depth of your care for others in this world. To the extent we love, we hurt. As these relationships change, as people leave, as people pass, it hurts, but it's just pain. And there's a sweetness to it, because had you not loved, you would not have hurt. When you can bring wise thought, the second step on the Eightfold Noble Path, and realize that none of these things are bad, they're beautiful, including the painful emotions. So I'd like to end with this. If we're going to understand ourselves, much less other people, we must look beneath these patterns, face our emotions in their natural, undisguised state. When we are stuck at the level of habitual dramas, it's like going through the day kind of half awake, barely conscious of the world's brilliance, of the actual brilliance and perfection of these emotions. They are part of us. They are natural. Some part of us may like this half-asleep state where there's nothing too bright, nothing too energetic, nothing too unknown, but another part of us can hardly wait to be free, to take a chance to see what is on the other side of the mountain. One of the most valuable and misunderstood resources we have is our emotions, and to become free of the unhappiness they can cause in our relationships. We only have one thing to do, and that is respect and accept our emotions moment by moment and be willing to work with them.